Hey everybody, welcome to Breakfast All Day. Christy, Alonzo, Matt is on hiatus, but he will be back. And in the meantime, we have news.
We do. It's your favorite time of year, Alonzo. It's award season.
Ooh. Now I know what movies are good.
Right. And they're ones that we already like. They're Licorice Pizza, apparently. So this week, the Directors Guild, the Writers Guild, the Producers Guild all came out with their nominees for the best movies of the year. So we've got a little bit of a shape taking hold here as far as what our theoretical frontrunners are. All of those nominations came out the same day that Oscar voters began being able to vote. And so your DGA nominees are Paul Thomas Anderson for Licorice Pizza, Spielberg for West Side Story, Jane Campion for The Power of the Dog, Denis Villeneuve for Dune, and the fifth one, of course, I wrote it down. Now I can't remember what it is Kenneth Branagh for Belfast. Belfast is a movie that was directed by Kenneth Branagh. So, and then you have Writers Guild, and the Writers Guild is so weird because things that you would think would, of course, be in there, like The Power of the Dog and like The Lost Daughter, are not for adapted screenplay because of some kind of like either membership rules or requirements. Anyway.
It's like the SAG Awards. Somebody was telling me they were really disappointed that neither Penelope Cruz nor Renata Reinse got nominated for Best Actress. I'm like, well, could they? I mean, are they even members of SAG if they work in other countries? So yeah, the guilds, it is very this lockdown thing of you like, are you in or are you out? And so a lot of times I remember there was one year where like Nicole Holofcener's Please Give got a Writers Guild nomination. I'm like, awesome. This is the last we're ever going to hear about this during award season, but it got in there because like these other two big movies that did wind up getting Oscar nominations didn't qualify for whatever reason.
Yes. And the Producers Guild Awards, it's a lot of stuff. And of course, you know, there's also a whole like first directors category in DGA, and like Maggie Gyllenhaal got into there for The Lost Daughter. So your Producers Guild nominations are, and here's where things get wacky. Being the Ricardos, Belfast, Coda, Don't Look Up, Dune, King Richard, Licorice Pizza, The Power of the Dog, Tick, Tick, Boom, Jazz Hands, and West Side Story.
Which I guess, thank goodness they didn't go with House of Gucci. I mean, like this is such a weird award season. Like the idea that House of Gucci and Being the Ricardos are movies that we are taking that are like going to be major players. And it's like, really? Am I losing my mind? What? But, you know, again, I have to always remind myself, none of this matters. And these aren't about quality.
Except that Licorice Pizza and Dune are the two that made it across like all four of the major guilds. So Producers Guild, Directors Guild, Writers Guild, and also Editors, the Ace Eddie Awards.
Right, gotcha.
So those two are the only ones that got it across all four. Does it in any way translate into Oscars? Not necessarily.
No, but it's there's always like, oh, well, this is a bellwether for that. Well, almost always. And I mean, I don't know. It is that weird thing though of like, you know, they do this with the Critics Awards, and I've complained about this publicly, and they do it with the Guild Awards, where it's like we can never sort of stop and just say, oh, look, this is who the directors chose, or this is who the editors chose. No, it's like, what does this mean for Oscar? You know?
And then, you know, like maybe 4 of the 5 Directors Guild nominees will then get an Oscar nomination, and that wild card is some foreign film like Another Round got in, you know, things like that. So who knows? Martin Scorsese was lending his name and his clout to support Nightmare Alley. He wrote an op-ed in the LA Times saying, you guys got to see this movie. What are you thinking? Why are you sleeping on this? I'm paraphrasing, of course.
Yes.
But that was the gist of it. Nightmare Alley did not get in there in DGA or PGA, but it got a Writers Guild nomination. So.
Okay. Yeah. Marty and I respectfully disagree on that one, but there were some choices that I found a little flummoxing. The Cinematographers Guild did not nominate Janusz Kaminski for West Side Story. And I'm like,
he's a legend.
Is that personal? Like what? How do you look at that movie and not nominate? I don't know. Who knows? I mean, and again, the other thing about these awards is like, you know, the 5 get in and everybody else was snubbed. It's like, no, sometimes this person in sixth place loses by one vote, you know?
Right.
And also it's not like all these people, it's funny. I say, that's like all these people gather in a room and decide who they're going to snub. Even when we do gather in a room like LAFCA does, like it's never about who are we excluding. It's like, who are we trying to get in there, you know? And ultimately it comes down to the numbers. So that people read so much stuff into this and all to lead to the Academy Awards, which we will then forget who won within the year anyway.
Who won last year?
Last year was Nomadland, right?
Yes, and Chloe Zhao.
Yes, but like, who won cinematography? No memory. No, I don't remember who edited. I know that not Michael Caine, Anthony Hopkins won because that was a big shocker. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's just like, I don't know. I find this whole Oscar hamster wheel exhausting. And as soon as we're starting to forget who won this year, we're already having to talk about next year. I've already heard people talk about, like, out of Sundance, which of these movies are we going to be looking at for Oscars next year? And it's like,
right.
I can't.
It's perennial Oscar season.
Yeah, it's like Christmas. Once it's over, you can always look forward to the next one.
It's a contact sport. And also our friends across the way at the New York Film Critics Circle, they have rescheduled their awards for March 16th. They had a plan to do a dinner in January, but of course it did not happen because of Omicron.
Right.
Many of my news items are about beefs. I'm just putting it out there. It's a very tense week. Lots of conflict. What's that?
Feuding and a fussing.
Lots of feuding and a fussing. So one of my main feuds, Neil Young and Spotify.
Well,
Neil Young, the inspiration for our song this week, our opening song, very hard to pick one, but I think I made the right choice. And I love how people are like, ooh, now young people are having to learn who's Neil Young. Well, pull up a chair, young whippersnapper, and let me tell you about Neil Young and his convictions. So he said to Spotify, I'm going to take my music down because you also have Joe Rogan on your platform and he is spouting all kinds of anti-vax misinformation and propaganda. And I just cannot abide by that.
And anti-trans, let's not forget.
Oh, so many things. But, and so they said, sure, off you go. And so now there's no Neil Young music on Spotify.
As somebody said, Neil Young being taken off Spotify is going to cost him hundreds of dollars a year. Because Spotify is so legendarily shitty about paying artists, you know, for streaming their music. By the way, we also need to give credit. The first musician that I know of who has followed suit and is also removing his work, the great Barry Manilow.
He is the great Barry Manilow, and I understand that Peter Frampton has also done the same.
Awesome.
Well so there you go. And I've also seen all these think pieces and like, why Spotify had to pick Joe Rogan? Like, it's pretty simple. It's sad, but it's money.
Well, also, right? I mean, aren't they paying him some absurd amount of money to be there in the first place? Like, didn't he sign a big contract with Spotify? So it's not like, they're just carrying it. It's like they hired him to be their guy, you know? So anyway, good on you, Neil Young. It is consistent with how Neil Young has always composed himself as an artist in dealing with the ickier sides of the industry. And so good on him.
Indeed. He walks the walk. Also, speaking of misinformation, Evangeline Lilly was at RFK Jr.'s anti-vax rally and then posted about it. I hate the phrase doubling down, but she's doubling down. And she's saying, I believe in bodily sovereignty.
Mm-hmm. She spouted this nonsense early on in the pandemic and then very quickly shut up about it. And it would have been nice if she'd held to that, but here we are. My favorite comment was a friend of mine on Facebook who wrote, Kevin Feige dejectedly erases Shuri and the Wasp from the whiteboard.
It's true. So isn't there like a whole third Ant-Man movie, Quantumania, right?
I believe so, yes.
Right. So I'm not sure. Again, like, what do you do when you have a massive production and you have certain vaccination requirements? You have a huge cast and crew. Everyone's got to be safe.
You find out if Hillary Duff would be interested in playing the Wasp. I don't know.
Is she pro-vax?
I just, it's a name I pulled out of my hat.
That's a really good one. I like that one.
Thank you.
Hillary Duff would make a fine Wasp. Okay.
Certainly.
So there's that. The Chinese don't like how dreary the ending of Fight Club is.
Like they don't. It's not the dreariness that they don't like.
It is the dreariness. Well, it's the sticking it to the man.
That's what they don't like. Is what it is. The anti-establishmentarianism of
right.
Of the
there's a Chinese streaming service that has changed the end of Fight Club. So when you watch the film on the streaming service, they have like a title card at the end, basically saying these guys got caught and like the law and order prevail.
Yes, the authorities caught up with Tyler and he was stopped before he could see out his plan. Like, but you know what? Like this is what happens with, I'd like to say this is what happens with dictatorships. Of course, we're living in a country where counties can decide to pull mouse out of, libraries because heaven forbid a book that depicts the horrors of the Holocaust includes some swearing and some nudity and a pile of corpses, So yeah, sadly, this is what happens to art when it's inconvenient for the power structure. They just decide to cover it up because, if you let people consider what the ramifications of the ending of Fight Club is, or you let them read Mouse or The Bluest Eye, then, what happens then,
Or The Catcher in the Rye, right? One of my dearest mom friends is a high school English teacher who still gets shit about teaching Catcher of the Rye
really?
to her 10th graders.
Yeah, I think that's always like very at or near the top of the banned books list. It's crazy.
And as you pointed out very astutely, it's a book about empathy. Like eventually you should learn things like that. Peter Dinklage is not happy about the live action Snow White that Disney is doing. He went on Mark Maron's podcast.
Yes.
And talked about how, like, what are we doing here? Why are we still using, dwarves as a punchline? And why is no one listening to me about this? And this seems like an antiquated and kind of gross idea. And Disney actually responded and said, we are depicting these dwarves differently and we're coming at it from a different perspective. And it's not going to be like a bunch of little people living in a cave.
Right. Well, they live in a cabin, don't they?
Where do they live? They live in the woods.
I thought it was a cabin. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I mean, it's weird because Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is in the public domain. In the past few years, we've seen Snow White and the Huntsman and Mirror Mirror. Like they keep dredging this story up, and they either cast little people or they CG non-little actors to do it. But I mean, good on him for bringing it up. I think it's certainly a point that needs to be made. I was reminded how last week on Patreon for our Off the Menu, we talked about Sidney Poitier and In the Heat of the Night. And I was rereading in the Mark Harris book, Pictures from a Revolution, about how because Poitier in the late 60s was sort of like the one Black movie star that Hollywood decided they could handle, like that they decided this is the one actor that we're going to elevate and like pay the big bucks to and put his name above the title, even though there's obviously tons of talented Black actors out there who we aren't going to give this platform to. And I was just thinking about how like Peter Dinklage is currently stuck being the Poitier of little people actors in terms of like, he's the guy who has to bring this up and have Disney notice it. He's the guy who gets asked in interviews, well, what do you think about this issue about little people or that issue? And it's like, it's got to be exhausting. And he didn't ask to be put in this position, but here we are.
Right. Ask me about singing in Cyrano instead. This is why I am here.
Exactly.
And we'll review Cyrano in a few weeks. So there you go. So there is that. More Disney scandal. Minnie Mouse wears a pantsuit.
I can't even with this. Like Fox News does not want to talk about like the January 6th investigation. They don't want to talk about what's actually happening with COVID and what people should be doing to prevent its getting worse. So they gin up nonsense about non-stories like this and the M&Ms. And it's like, who cares? It is a colossal waste of time. And it's a way to sort of like reinforce like antiquated traditional gender stereotypes and like clutch their pearls literally in this case about what does this mean and what is liberal Hollywood doing to blah 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 blah. And it's just like couple things.
Minnie has worn pants before.
Of course,
this is not her first foray into pants. It is a Stella McCartney designed pantsuit for Paris Fashion Week, I want to say. Like there's a time peg on it. It's not just like, woo, Minnie is going to run for president now in her blue pantsuit. It's not that. And she still wears a bow in her hair. She's still super girly, you guys. And so I'm not sure what the complaints are about.
Well, you know, they would rather talk about M&Ms and the fact that like M&M Mars was involved in a lawsuit alleging that they used child slave labor to pick cocoa beans, a suit that got thrown out by the U.S. Supreme Court because this happened outside of the U.S. And of course, the U.S. Supreme Court has been packed by Mitch McConnell to like completely be the handmaiden of American corporatocracy. But that's a story for another day.
Those of you who missed last week's episode missed us talking about how the M&Ms are getting a makeover to wear lower heels and to be friends with each other and not bully each other and to embrace their anxiety.
And change shoes.
And different shoes, more sensible shoes. Yes. Taylor Swift and Damon Albarn from Blur and Gorillaz. I was today years old when I realized that the guy from Blur is also the guy from Gorillaz. Huh? I don't know why I didn't know that, but apparently he's also an asshole. That's how he comes off in this LA Times article where he's like, she doesn't write her own songs. Like, yes, she does. And he's like, no, she co-writes some, not the same thing. So say what you will about Taylor Swift.
That's his response? Co-writing?
Yes, it's not the same thing. Oh, say what you will about Taylor Swift, whether you like her songs or not. The one thing that she's very famous for is writing her own songs. The lyrics are all really personal. They're all about various ex-boyfriends and experiences in her life. Like she's a really vivid lyricist and like it comes from a very personal place because she writes them. And so this is like the bone he dares to pick. So I guess he must have just been like hammered by the Swifties because he then had to apologize. But the timing of it all is so interesting because the reason he was being interviewed by the LA Times on this particular occasion was he did a one night only performance with the LA Philharmonic on like Monday night. Like he's going to play the piano with the LA Phil. And that's like why they were talking to him. And it got totally derailed and hijacked by his idiot comments about Taylor Swift. And so now no one's talking about his concert. They're all talking about how dare you besmirch Taylor's, professional abilities.
I mean, like, if you are Damon Albarn, why are you trying to stir the shit with Taylor Swift? Like, did this once work where, like, if you complained about Oasis, then that kept you in the headlines, and so like now you're just finding whoever's more popular now and doing that to it? It seems like you would be more interested in talking about like why you're great and why this opportunity with the LA Phil is so exciting than to just shit on like. I bet you he just picked this name at random and didn't even think about why. I mean, because like I'm not going to throw myself on a sword for Taylor Swift, but yeah, she writes that shit. So it's like I don't.
It is very 90s, but to quote Taylor herself, "A comeback stronger than a 90s trend."
Well, there you go.
There you go.
It's not like she's Alan Freed and they're putting her name on stuff because of some shady dealings. Like, no, she's involved.
He likes Billie Eilish. She thinks she's good.
Well, good for him.
And she also writes, but she co-writes with Phineas. They write these things together. It's okay. Anyway, it's stupid. More stupid music spats. Morrissey and Johnny Marr still hate each other.
Oh, get a room, you two.
Did you see this week?
No, now what?
So Morrissey put out an open letter on his email. On his website, rather. An open letter on his website to Johnny Marr, former guitarist for the Smiths. Right. They used to work together many decades ago, and they used to get along, kinda. Now they hate each other. But he says to Johnny Marr, please stop talking about me in your interviews. I'm sick of reading headlines about you trashing me. Talk about something else. You have your own career. Please talk about your own music. It was a lifetime ago we worked together. Why do you keep talking about me?
Well, the complicating factor here is that Morrissey is a piece of shit. So I understand why people would still ask about Morrissey and why Johnny Marr might feel compelled to say things about Morrissey. I mean, yes, theoretically, Morrissey is right. This was decades ago. We've moved on. take my name out of your mouth. But again, I do want to keep coming back to the irrefutable notion that Morrissey is a piece of shit. Yeah. So I don't really care.
It's sad that speaking of our favorite conversation of separating the artist from the art, I have a hard time with this with Morrissey too, because I love the Smiths and I love Morrissey.
Of course.
Anyway, so it's a bummer. And Johnny Marr responded with something snippy and pithy on Twitter. But again, I'm sure that like literally every single interview Johnny Marr does, at some point, someone asks him about Morrissey.
Well, of course. It's like if
like Peter Dinklage being asked about being a little person, like they have other interests.
Right. But if you were in the Beatles, people are always going to ask you about having been in the Beatles. Like, I mean, the Smiths were a major thing, and you deal with it, you know?
It's very, very, very funny. One more shitty music thing. Kid Rock has a shitty new song out.
Oh, speaking of pieces of shit, speaking of racist pieces of shit specifically.
Have you heard?
No, I haven't heard it. There was a great tweet this week that was like, if you're boycotting Kid Rock's music for political purposes, may I suggest boycotting it for musical purposes?
I guess it's redundant to say that Kid Rock has a shitty new song out, because it's obvious. I spent 4 minutes of my life listening to it because I'm a professional.
I was going to say, you're a news gatherer.
I am. I'm a serious journalist. I used to be a cop reporter. I covered shootings and floods and city council meetings, and I need to know exactly what Kid Rock is saying in his terrible new song titled "We the People." And basically it's like, fuck CNN and fuck Twitter too. And then there's like a, oh yeah, from some woman in the background who's in the background of all the songs. And the chorus has a "Let's Go Brandon."
Of course it does.
For those of you who are unaware what this is, it's a stupid code thing that conservatives use to say F Joe Biden. Instead, they say "Let's go Brandon." And so they sing it in the chorus. And then there's like a whole long piece at the end of the song of people at a rally somewhere or at a concert somewhere chanting "Let's go Brandon."
What was the comedy thing where some right-wing dude's only "Let's go Brandon," and a left-wing person was like, fuck Joe Biden, and then like explain all the reasons why Democrats are annoyed with Joe Biden and just saying fuck Joe Biden. Oh, it was the Amber Ruffin show.
Okay.
And he's like, but you can't say that. And she's like, yeah, I can. Fuck Joe Biden, you know? And so, yeah, the "Let's Go Brandon" thing is so infantile, and us will apparently never die. Right-wingers just find that endlessly amusing, and it's so like just tacky and immature. Again, not because they're saying fuck Joe Biden, because fuck Joe Biden, but the fact that they just think they're being so tee-hee about it. It's like,
it's code.
Yeah, fuck Donald Trump too. When are you going to say that? You know,
it's like we're passing notes in class. They don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that. Elton John has COVID, had to cancel a couple of dates in his farewell tour in Dallas. He had to cancel some concerts there. Colin Jost and Pete Davidson bought a Staten Island ferry. They bought a boat.
A Staten Island ferry, not the Staten Island ferry.
Well, there are many of them.
Sure.
They bought a boat and they're going to turn into a party boat.
Great.
Right.
It did at least give them an excuse to bring the guy who bought a boat back to Weekend Update. But I get the idea of those two, like even talking to each other outside of 30 Rock, much less going in on a business proposition together, I find kind of unexpected, but okay, sure.
I just wonder, is this the exact one that like Melanie Griffith rides in to work every day and Working Girl, or is this the one that like Peter Parker held together with Webb in the first Spider-Man that he did? Anyway,
maybe. Well, it's not the tugboat that Barbara Streisand rides in Funny Girl. That much.
Oh, that's the party boat that I want to be on.
There you go. Yes.
There's going to be for the tweens in your life, I have some news. There's going to be a Percy Jackson series coming to Disney Plus. Now, there were a couple of Percy Jackson movies, and they weren't very good.
You know, I didn't see the first one, and I did have to review the second one. I was like, I don't hate this.
They're okay.
Of the wave of post Harry Potter YA movies that we got, and a lot of them very rightly stopped after the first movie. I didn't hate it, but yeah, it's not the greatest. But
the thing is that with that movie, they aged the kids up by several years. In the books, they're like 12. Nick has read like every single Percy Jackson, every single book by this guy, by Rick Riordan. He's read them all. There's a whole like Magnus Chase series. There's a whole series where there's like a non-binary character who then kisses the main boy character. Like it's very forward thinking in a lot of ways. And Nick was
Okay.
like, oh, they kiss, it's no big deal. So there's going to be, in a couple of years, I don't know when, they're developing it now, and Rick Riordan himself is going to have more involvement in this series than he had in those movies. So in theory, it's going to be closer to his
Sure.
vision, because his books are like beloved. There's several different like 5-book series. And anyway, Nick
maybe they'll restart Artemis Fowl. They have nowhere to go but up at this point.
They're Chris Evans and Dwayne Johnson. Some Christmas news for you, honey.
Yes.
They're going to be in a movie called Red One, an action movie on Amazon, a Christmas action movie. What do you know about this?
Not much. When they first announced it, as with Dwayne Johnson being the only name attached, I think that Red One might have something to do with Santa, but I forget now, frankly. So I don't know a ton here, but it's interesting that Johnson is doing like however many more Red Notice movies for Netflix, but they did not tie him down to any kind of exclusivity, even in the streaming world. So he's doing one for Netflix and doing a couple for Netflix and now one for Amazon. And I suppose he's got Peacock on the line. I don't know.
You can't hold him back. Jason Momoa is apparently going to be in the next Fast and Furious movie.
So I'm hearing, I think in talks is what they're saying.
In talks.
And I've made this joke, but I was not the first to make this joke, but they have to call it Fast 10, your seatbelts.
Absolutely. It's a given. A couple more things. The Mighty Mighty Boss Tones are breaking up after nearly 40 years. I've seen them in concert in Boston.
Well, they said someday, I suppose, and I guess that day has arrived.
That is here. And one last thing, we had a lot of death last week. We only had one death for you this week, and that is fashion designer Thierry Mugler.
Yes.
Dead at 73. Worked with so many like larger than life divas like Diana Ross to Beyonce to Kim Kardashian. Also co-directed with George Michael.
Yes.
Too Funky video.
Let us never forget.
Right. Like itty bitty waist, like big structured shoulders, and like use of metal and like very uncomfortable materials, but was known for a very dramatic style. So
yeah, I think there are designers that you can't think of a certain period of time without thinking of them, Chanel and Dior in earlier parts of the the mid 20th century. But yeah, when you start getting into like 80s, 90s, Mugler is just one of those like guys whose stuff just it is the way you think about that period of time. Coming right on the heels of Andre Leon Talley. They were both the same age. So two big blows for fashion in the last couple of weeks.
There you go. And that's all I got for you.
All righty. Well, hey, thanks for watching, everybody. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like this video, follow us on social media at BeFastAllDay, and hey, check out our Patreon at patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. So many cool things there. You get videos like this with no commercial interruption. You get our TV recaps. Right now, we're talking about Book of Boba Fett. We're talking about Peacemaker. We're talking about The Gilded Age. We're going to be talking about Pam and Tommy. It's just like there's so much TV happening, and we're making it all happen over on Patreon. Our monthly Off the Menu, and some of our awesome new Patreon members include.
We got so many great new friends to join us in January. Johnny Higgins, Billy Ray Bruton, someone named just Keely. Hi, Keely.
Hey.
Kim McLean, Jerry Danton, Brian Rector, Amble Crystal Daughter, who I'm guessing is Icelandic. James O'Hagan, Shelby, just Shelby, like Cher, Derek
or
Kim,
Keely.
right? Derek Kim, Joanne Thanavaro, Ivan A. Campos, Daniel O'Neill, Gregory Tyler, Con Luth. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, Con Luth. Welcome. Tim Ryan, Christine Meggs, Jeremy Daw, Jared Colley, and Susie Geisler. It's a bunch. We got a bunch of new Patreon friends this month.
Well,
we are so happy to
everybody.
see you. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. And we have lots of goodies in store for you.
And you too can become a subscriber by checking us out at patreon.com/BeFastAllDay. Have a good week, everybody. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.